Obviously, to have this discussion, we're going to have a deep dive into the Eternals and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, fair warning, spoilers ahead. The plot of Eternals, gosh, it is just a mess. To start with, what we have essentially are some eternal beings created by the great energy god, Basham, and they are there to defeat some other creatures that he made that feed on humanity. Eventually, they've destroyed all of those creatures until near the beginning of the movie, one comes back and it's now evolved. So to be honest with you, it's pretty complicated. It's one of those films that you go, it's both complicated and boring. The wokeness in Eternals is pretty heavy, and one of the most obvious ways that you're going to see that is the cast. The Eternals, these created guardians of mankind, come in all genders, colors, sexuality, and ability, which, if we had some explanation for that, might be fine. But we have no explanation for why the god Basham decided to make one of the Eternals a deaf girl, why one is a child of indeterminate gender, why some are minority women. And there's no explanation given for that. And it's frustrating. As you watch the movie, you go, I don't understand. Why did he do this? Also, we have LGBT representation in this film. For the first time, it's quite overt. We have a gay Black Eternal superhero, Phastos, and he has a male partner and a child, and that actually features somewhat prominently in the movie. So that is a really big turn from Marvel, particularly given how much this franchise appeals to families. I think there's no doubt that there are some families who are going to forego this film because of that. For this sort of rainbow coalition that we have with the Eternals, I think it's important to note that they didn't start that way in the comic book. There was a lot of race swapping, gender swapping going on here with this cast. And again, there was really no explanation from Marvel, from the screenwriters, from head Kevin Feige about why they did this other than for the sake of representation. Kevin Feige was really the visionary who first saw the potential for Marvel to take the Avengers and create a cinematic universe out of that, to create an interconnected franchise where they would have individual films that would also come together in these big collective films. Kevin Feige has been pretty explicit that he plans to take the Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe pretty explicitly woke. He's given interviews to outlets like Variety saying they are going to plan for more LGBT representation, that they are going to look for more opportunities to develop minority and female superheroes. And again, he's not talking about any of this in service to the story, in service to the plots or the fans. He's really saying it very explicitly that we are just doing it for the sake of identity politics. I don't know that I would say that something has changed for Feige. I think, like a lot of people, when you're on your way up in your career, you're really focused on doing the good work that's going to get you attention, that's going to get you success. And then once you get to the top of that heap, often what you're looking around for now is prestige. And he wants the prestige of his industry. So he has been talking about bringing some of this left-wing agenda to the Marvel world for a while. And part of the reason that we didn't see it sooner was I really do think that Disney executives, basically because of the bottom line, were resisting that. At this point, he feels like he has the power and cachet to push in the direction that he wants, and he's being backed up by the actors. You know, it's funny, when people ask, do studios do this just to appease audiences? I think it's important to ask, what audiences are we talking about? Because certainly, not the average film goers in flyover country, they're not clamoring to see a lot of gay representation in their superhero movies that they take their kids to. But if you're talking about audiences who work in the media and who heavily influence what these studio execs hear, what they read, those are the people that I do think they're appealing to. And in a sense, that is an audience because those are the critics, right? These are the people that are giving you your Rotten Tomatoes score. And to be quite fair, I think that if Eternals had not had the gay character, had it not had so many minority characters, had it not had a disabled character, I don't even think it would have scored the very low, the lowest in the MCU, 48% Rotten Tomatoes score that it did score, because it was really just that poor of a movie. Look, these guys aren't dumb. I think on some level they do realize that, your average moviegoer, your average Marvel fan wasn't looking for this. They weren't clamoring for this. I don't think the average guy who started out in 2008 watching Iron Man, who buys the comic books, I don't think he was dying for gay representation in the movies. What they're banking on is the idea that you're already a fan, you've already given us so much of your time and money, you're gonna go ahead and stick with us, even though we're starting to put that sort of thing into our films, even though we're starting to push an agenda. What are you gonna do? Stop going to Marvel movies? They're betting on the fact that people aren't going to stop going to Marvel movies. Marvel fans aren't opposed to diversity. I don't think anybody who loves comic books is opposed to diversity. I love diversity for the right reasons. If it's organic to the story, I think a lot of people are excited about Shang-Chi because it was organic to that story. It was an Asian-based story. It made sense to emphasize that culture in that story. I think a lot of people were excited about Black Panther for the same reason. You didn't see audiences go, oh, I don't want to see a Black superhero. No, it made sense to the story. It was an important part of where he came from, where the plot developed from there. So I do think people don't mind in the slightest way. What they mind is being force-fed something that has no creative artistry. And I think that's what they're feeling with something like the Eternals. I think that was where people kind of got upset and rejected it.
This video is brought to you by Kamikoto. Kamikoto makes great Japanese steel kitchen knives using traditional techniques from Japan. They only use steel sourced from mills in Japan, and each blade is crafted using techniques that have been honed and perfected by generations of bladesmiths. Every knife comes in a beautiful, heavy-duty ashwood box. And make sure that the knife is stored safely, and it also makes this a wonderful gift. Can't you see just getting that, and opening it up and saying, this person who just gave this to me clearly loves me. Each knife is individually inspected, and Kamikoto is so confident about their knives that each knife comes with a lifetime guarantee. Kamikoto is currently having a massive holiday sale, and on top of that sale, you can get an additional $50 off any purchase you make with discount code DailyWire. I've used these knives. They are ridiculously sharp. I tried to take this box home with me because after I used them, I wanted them. They told me I wasn't allowed, but I'm gonna go buy my own set. You should do the exact same thing. Just use the code DailyWire again for that discount. So click the link below or go to kamikoto.com/dailywire and use promo code DailyWire to save an extra $50 today.
You know, it's funny. It really tells us how much these identity politics have come to dominate just every cultural conversation. Because in 1998, when Wesley Snipes came out in Blade, nobody was talking about, oh, hey, we have a Black superhero. It just wasn't on our radar. And unfortunately, I do think the fact that it became such a big deal for Black Panther tells us how much ground we've lost in erasing these distinctions of Black, white, identity groups. It becomes the main thrust of the movie, and that's too bad because it actually takes away from the creativity and from the storytelling, and it just shows how much we've lost as a common culture. There's so little that we enjoy just for fun's sake now, right? Now you have to enjoy it because you're furthering some cause or you're lending your voice to some movement. I don't know, can I just go see a movie? So the question of China and Marvel is a very fraught, complicated question right now. The last few Marvel movies have not released in China. There is no indication that Eternals is going to get a Chinese release. And maybe that's part of the reason that they went ahead and took the risk of leaning so far into the LGBTQ representation, leaning so far into the diversity marketing, because it was pretty clear early on that that film was likely not going to get a release in the Chinese box office. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the next MCU releases. So I don't know. I think the game could change very significantly at this point because it seems like the big Chinese dollars that studios like Disney have relied on so heavily are suddenly drying up. So the question of censorship and the Marvel Universe hasn't really been something that's come up a lot. In Avengers Endgame, Captain America had a counseling session, and one of the men in the group, this unnamed character, mentioned a husband. Well, for example, in Russia, that dialogue was changed to make that man heterosexual. And so you would see little things like that. I don't know how they're going to be able to navigate that going forward. We're already hearing that Eternals is not getting a release in the Middle East either. When they have that much content, I think it's going to be a lot harder for them to just, change a little bit of the dubbing or slice a little piece off for the cutting room floor. In this case, if they think they're already not going to get a release anyway, there's probably not going to be any censoring because I don't know how they're going to get around it with this film. From pushing the diversity angle to possibly making a diversity hire in the director's chair, what we're seeing from beginning to end is that this wasn't a good choice for Marvel, and it's not going to be a good choice for them going forward into this phase 4 of the MCU. Eternals scored the lowest Rotten Tomatoes score in history, 48% from critics. It also scored the lowest cinema score in history. Now that ranks audience reactions. That's a survey of people as they come out of the movies telling you whether or not they liked it. Well, they didn't. At least not very many of them, not compared to the other Marvel movies. So from both critics and your average moviegoer, it's the lowest ranking movie in Marvel history. I'm not a prophet, so I don't know what happens to Marvel from here on out. But what I can see is that this obsession they have now with appeasing the left and promising them that they're going to get all the woke representation they want in phase 4, it's not off to a good start. And if they continue down this path, I think they're going to lose audiences. I think they're going to lose their core fan base. The reality is people didn't sign up for Marvel for this. People signed up for Captain America. People signed up for Iron Man and Spider-Man. I don't think they're going to sign up for two men kissing, a mild sex scene, but a sex scene in a superhero movie. Part of the reason that this franchise did so well is because it was one of the few types of movies that everyone could still go and enjoy together. It was still an example of the shared common culture we still had. When they're breaking that apart and making it yet another point in the political battle, when they're making it yet another political commentary, people don't want to pay money for that. People don't want to spend their time on that. So I think it's going to be a big mistake if they don't change course, if the wake-up call of Eternals' very bad scores and pretty mediocre box office doesn't shake some sense into them. I think this will be the end of the Marvel Universe as we knew it.